Welcome everybody to our first CEM Dialogue of this year. My name is Bernal Herrera. I am a member of the Commission on Ecosystem Management Steering Committee, and on behalf of our chair, Angela Andrade, who cannot join us today, I would like to thank you all for joining us in this relevant and important event for the Commission, and I would say for the biodiversity audience. In today's event, we would launch the book entitled "The Power of Women-Led Conservation in Mountain Ecosystems." This book has been edited by Omer Ayasi and Sejuti Basu. Before we start, I wanted just to say that a couple of words about the importance and relevance of this book and the event. It seems that there is no doubt about the relevance that gender issues have in ecosystem management science and practice. And our commission, through this book, has recognized this importance. This book intends to highlight the relevance of this topic in mountain ecosystem, but I would say that its key messages and findings could also be applied to a wide range of biodiversity conservation practices, including nature-based solutions. That's, as you know, it's a key topic in our commission. And I also want to remark that this book, as it was mentioned in the announcement of this event, that this book and all the messages that involved, is also a call on the urgency of integrating critical feminist knowledge within environmental stewardship. On behalf of the Commission on Ecosystem Management, we would like to thank Omer and Sejuti for their leadership in this project. And we would also want to congratulate the rest of the book authors for their outstanding contribution to make this book possible. For finishing, I just want to wish you a very fruitful and productive discussion session today. Thank you very much again for joining us. Omer?
Thanks, Bernal. Again, good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are. And special thanks to those who are joining us from less than convenient time zones. So I'm Omer Ayasi, the lead of the Mountain Ecosystem Thematic Group. We're also joined on this call by Sejuti Basu, who is our co-lead. We both edited the volume, and momentarily you'll be hearing from our wonderful authors. Before we do that, I just wanted to share with you a couple of thoughts to get us oriented to the bigger conversations at stake. Firstly, the publication was born out of the realization that academic knowledge on gender, particularly in critical feminist traditions, has radically outpaced the way aspects of gender are taken up and operationalized within the conservation movement. So we imagine this publication to be kind of a meeting point of sorts, a kind of a clearinghouse to showcase how one can continue to imagine, by way of practice, a more expansive and dedicated approach to gender. And when we say gender, we are really talking about power. And we think power is what lies also at the heart of the questions of gender and conservation. We also think that there's an urgent need to go beyond, the category of gender as something that is static, so not just, men versus women, or something that is universalistic, that all women have the same experiences, to appreciate more fully gender as fluid, as contextual, and as relational. And we think there's no one entry point into these conversations, and a multiplicity of stakeholders is essential. So we've tried to open up the conversation by inviting a range of authors, from small community groups to academic researchers to feminist collectives to government offices and so forth. So as a result, there is a certain kind of energy and vibrancy to the volume, which we hope you will benefit from. And finally, no one is outside scrutiny. Just because we use words like critical or even feminist The label alone doesn't place us outside critique. We still have to demonstrate by action and impact. With that, we now turn to our authors. Each author will briefly introduce themselves and take about 5 minutes to offer some reflections on their work on gender and conservation, what they've learned, what they wish they could have done better, what is more to do. So in a kind of a rapid fire kind of a format, we now turn to our first speaker. So over to you, Anu.
Thank you, Omar. Yeah, namaste. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you very much, CEM, especially Omar and Sujiti, for organizing such important dialogue and providing me this opportunity to present our experience from our work of mountain ecosystems. Yeah, I'm going to present a case from our pilot project, Mountain EVA, which has been implemented in the Panchase, a protected forest area of Western Nepal, where the common natural phenomena are landslide and flash flood, and major ecosystems are forest, agriculture, and water bodies. The area is dominated by Asian monsoon system, with an average annual rainfall 3,882. Our case is related to the promotion of women-led community homestay business for reducing the vulnerability of local community and enhancing gender resilience as part of ecosystem-based adaptation approach. Hope that you all are aware on the impact of climate change on ecosystem service and has ultimately long-run effects on food security and livelihoods. The effects of climate change are not gender neutral, and there will be an added challenge in achieving gender equitable livelihood goals. Both women and men are vulnerable to climate change. However, since they have different role and status in their society, they are differently vulnerable. Therefore, addressing for the climate change impact, a sound understanding of their adaptive capacity and capacity building on adaptation is critical for effective adaptation in the ground. As we know, women are mainly responsible for the conservation and management of the natural resources and are key agent of change, particularly in mountain areas. But their understanding and knowledge on the climate change impact and adaptive capacity to cope or respond to this is very minimal. In this context, we need to strengthen their adaptive capacity through raising awareness on climate change impact, the contribution of ecosystem service on coping these impacts, and linking the conservation with business for enhancing ecosystem and their resilience. Under these initiatives, mother groups, especially from the Guru community, which is indigenous peoples, from 3 sub-watershed of Panchase area, represented 5 communities were supported for the promotion of homestay business. And along with homestay business, they were also involved in a range of ecosystem restoration, conservation, income generation, and sustainable ecosystem practice through the implementation of set of EVA measures by adopting an integrated and holistic EVA approach to ecotourism. Where homestay means a type of accommodation where visitors or guests pay directly or indirectly to stay in private homes, where they interact with the host family, and the host family usually but not always lives on the premise and share the home space with the guest. From this, the mother groups were able to understand the importance on the protection of mountain ecosystems for the successful business and receiving benefit from it, and also enhance their roles in an ownership of nature conservation efforts. Furthermore, the EBA measures nurture green tourism, which contributed in social, economic, cultural, and environmental benefits, creating green jobs at local level, diversify their livelihood opportunity, and increase household income. And they are also able to receive social benefits, reduce health hazards, and increasing nutrition security to women and saving time and energy of women through the efficient and gender-friendly technology. This resulted multiplier effect in the marginalized and vulnerable communities, mountain communities in rural area of Nepal, and reduced the shocks and stress of the climate change. Women were able to participate more effectively, and their ability to earn economic, social, cultural, and environmental benefits was enhanced. This helped to improve gender resilience as linked with the protection of different ecosystem service and preservation of community culture. These homestay business programs in Panchase is an exemplary case of connecting ecotourism, gender, protection of the ecosystem, and climate change. However, from the sustainability point of view, still there are lots of challenges, among which the most pertinent one is high rate of out-migration of young people in the area. It is not only the problem of this area, it is a problem of whole mountain range of Nepal and the policy gap. As a result, many homestays are increasingly being run by elderly people and difficult to run and maintain its standard in the long run. Further, the government continue to pay little or no attention to infrastructure development in the region, which is needed to enhance tourism opportunity. There is also immense untapped opportunity since the region is geographically close to urban area and lies on a trekking route. There is potential to link nature-based local entrepreneurial activity with urban market. The key lesson learned from this study is the woman solution is powerful and more effectively in enhancing the resilience of communities and ecosystems. However, we must empower the young woman to lead nature conservation initiatives and link the conservation with green businesses. And the business will be resilient if we promote local supply chain, local action through participatory and collective group approach and diversification of livelihood opportunity, including agroecological diversity, resource diversity, product diversity, social networks, physical infrastructure, and technology. For enhancing the gender resilience through any program, we should consider their meaningful and responsible participation in the program from the beginning to the end of the program. That is throughout the progress cycle, from design to monitoring and evaluation. To achieve the gender resilience and gender equitable livelihood goals, our future initiatives should be focused on linking nature conservation with green and resilient business through valuing indigenous knowledge, promoting youth, gender-friendly nature-based solution for enhancing gender and ecosystem resilience. Thank you very much for your kind attention. If you have any concern and queries, please.
Thanks, Anu. We'll take questions in the end altogether. So Anu is joining us from Nepal. She is with the IUCN. And now we move to our next speaker, that is Kamala Gurung. And Kamala is also joining us from Nepal, and she's part of ICIMOD. Over to you.
Sumar. Thank you very much. Good evening. I will start from evening. And good morning, good afternoon. Again, this is me, Kamala Gurung, currently working at ICIMOD as a gender and natural resource management specialist. Well, I'm very pleased to be part of this event, to share the experience, particularly bringing the case of women involvement in collective rural marketing. In the case of Argeli, I think the scientific name is the Edgeworthia gardneri, which is used to produce the handmade paper. With this, this is actually the case is brought from the Kanchenjunga Transboundary Landscape Initiative of ICIMOD. While setting, I'm super happy to be part of this event, connecting with the IUCN, since I'm also alumni, IUCN Nepal alumni. Setting off the topic, as we all know that the rural women, particularly in the mountain context, the women are engaged in various groups, whether it's a women groups, whether it's a community forest users group, with the various purposes, particularly social, addressing the social issues, and also conserving and developing, managing the natural resource management. But if you look at it in the Nepal context, because of this women involvement in the group and also collective approach, today many women from the rural areas are taking a lead role in the political forum, where they are raising their voice, and also at the national or local or even regional level. While working in this empowerment, women empowerment issues, we realize the fact that the economic empowerment is equally important along with the social empowerment. So now many organizations, including ICIMOD, is working in the entrepreneurship development. My colleague Ujjala will talk more about it, and also linking with the marketing as a producer. it's easy to say, but difficult to work in this entrepreneurship development as well, particularly in the mountain context. The producer are producing in a small quantity and also limited access to the market information. On top of that, particularly women, rural women are having a number of challenges, a barrier. For instance, the limited mobility outside the village or the house, and limited education background or literacy, and also time poverty, as Onu Ji mentioned. Challenges. The Kanchenjunga Landscape Initiative particularly identified to work with the existing women group, to work with these collective rural marketing linkages, particularly with this Argali product. Why we specifically selected Argali? Because of the in this Sidin municipalities is under the Pastor district of Nepal, which is located in the eastern part of Nepal. Majority of these Sidin municipality households are engaged in the Argali production. Particularly, they are from the indigenous group who are categorized as the marginalized and disadvantaged groups. Well, with particularly making this Argali product very much gender inclusive, we try to focus particularly for areas, steps of upgrading this Argali value chain. The first one is the process upgrading. Number two is the product upgrading. Number three is the functional. And the last one is the business enabling environment. Well, I won't explain this upgrading steps because of the time limitation. If there are any queries, please do ask. While working on this, we still feel that there are a number of challenges, particularly Argali is categorized as the non-timber forest product, but the producer actually cultivates in the private land. So there is an issue on that, whether it's under the NTFP or the private product from the private land or sector. So the government having the rule and regulation of the Nepal government still very confusing. So that's actually a constraint of promoting this Argali value chain as a enterprise, whether it belongs to the forest product or is under the agriculture product. I think that needs to be quite challenging, and we need to work more further with the to make the enabling environment. With this, I will hand over to Omarji. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamala. Now, continuing with Nepal, we have Janita and Ujala, who are also with IUCN. Over to you.
Thank you, Omer, and greetings to all participants from Kathmandu, Nepal. So as Omer said, Ujala and I are also from IUCN, and we are very pleased to share with you today our experiences and learning from another transboundary landscape in the Hindu Kush Himalaya. The Kailash sacred landscape is situated to the west of the region that our colleague Kamala just presented. It includes contiguous areas of 3 countries, China, India, and Nepal. And although political boundaries separate these 3 countries, the communities are linked through socio-cultural ties, that is through marriage, trade, religion, among others. We worked with women in this landscape to establish and strengthen biodiversity-based value chains through a range of interventions, including business establishment, capacity building, branding, among others. And now my colleague Ujala will summarize the key lessons learned from our work with the women in this Kailash sacred landscape.
So the key message of our paper is building women's entrepreneurship contributes significantly to their socio-economic empowerment. To empower women as entrepreneurs, an enabling environment is required. Some of the important factors to deliver this enabling environment includes family support. It is key to women being able to engage in income-generating activities. The support from the spouses, in-laws, and other family members is essential for women entrepreneurs to flourish. Second is the social trust. Social trust plays a vital role in effective functioning of the collective action. Trust must come from both community members as well as the government and non-governmental organizations. Market linkages is equally important because it ensures the regular sale of the products and hence ensures the regular cash flow to the entrepreneurs. And finally, enabling policy environment, which includes the availability of government schemes for the enterprise establishment and support. However, despite the achievement in the landscape, women continue to face persisting challenges. Majority of our communities in our landscape are patriarchal in nature, and family responsibilities means that women must first fulfill their family obligations, and then only they can concentrate on their enterprises. The existing social and cultural norms prevent many women from participating in the economic activities. And above all, illiteracy continues to be a major barrier for the women as it prevents them from formally implementing the enterprises. Being illiterate means that one cannot write the bills, fill out the paperwork for business registration, or do their bookkeeping, ultimately restricting them from establishing their own enterprises. We recognize that the economic interventions alone are not enough to achieve women's empowerment. A range of many other interventions are required, but ensuring that women are economically self-reliant goes a long way towards achieving the overall goal of women empowerment. So these are our findings in brief, but if you have any further questions, we'd be happy to elaborate them in the question and answer round. Thank you, and over to you, Omer.
Thanks, Janita and Angela. Our next speaker is not here, so we're going to skip them, and we're going to go over to Manjari Mehta. Manjari is an independent researcher and anthropologist at the Dehradun Library and Research Center from Uttarakhand, and her co-author, who's joining us as an audience member, is Ritu Yamna, who's also an independent researcher. Over to you, Manjari.
Thank you, Omer, and hello, everybody. It's really a pleasure to be here this evening. Ritu's in my paper, in a sense, is coming to the theme of the larger project from a different approach. Or different perspective, in that Himalayan women have typically been seen through a prism that has placed them within a relationship vis-a-vis natural resources that over a period of time in particular has not really spoken to the changing realities of their lives. So what we try to do is to create a more nuanced picture of how things are changing in the state in which we did our research, which is Uttarakhand, which I think my friends from Nepal will be well familiar with. I know ISIMOD has a lot of projects in this region. The research was actually conducted quite a long time ago after the very devastating floods in 2013, when there was a perceived sense of wanting to get a better look at how women's lives on the ground were being lived in different parts of the state. But when we came to this project, we in submitting a paper, we thought we wanted to look at the lives of the younger generation and how what their aspirations are in terms of thinking about the larger issues of women's roles in conservation, or indeed, even if women want to have a role in conservation. So really, to understand what's going on in this state, there are two very broad strands that have to be looked at. And one is the economic liberalization that began in the early 1990s, and when the Indian economy just opened up. And the other is the forming of the mountain state of Uttarakhand out of the larger state of Uttar Pradesh. And these two factors are really critical in understanding the context in which mountain communities, whether they're remote or middle-level communities, or in the lower lands, how they live their lives. And what I mean by that is that jobs and education and the whole context in which migration began to take place just exploded, in a sense, so that the conditions and circumstances of prosperity and rising aspirations opened up to a very large extent. So one of the things that we looked at is how even in fairly remote areas, children's access to education, the migratory routes of their parents, I should specifically say their fathers, because it's men, like in Nepal, typically the men who migrate out. But now social media and consumer culture that are playing a very pronounced role in shaping how young people think of themselves and thinking of how they want to live their lives. Another factor that is coming into this larger picture of how girls are thinking about what they want to do is, or even whether they can do it, is that everybody wants to advance their education and hopefully move out of the village. Once upon a time, this was something that men did, and boys just assumed that they would follow in the footsteps of their fathers. But more and more girls now wish to do this. Whether or not they can is a different matter. But the idea of resource conservation, even in areas that are, as one of the previous speakers spoke about, the climate crisis and the conditions of resource scarcity that shape people's lives. This is not necessarily how young people want to think about what they will do in their future lives. One of the things that I think does have to be taken very strongly into account is the way in which the whole context of mountain development is being shifted away from what was once spoken about in terms of sustainability and a more focused on the uniqueness of mountain landscapes perspective, is that with the present government, which is a Hindu nationalist government, the whole focus in these in this state on religious tourism has played a very devastating role in on the natural environment. So that 4-lane highways are being built to connect some of the main pilgrim areas in the Char Dham, linking the Char Dham. These are the 4 very important pilgrimage sites in Uttarakhand. So my point is that there are a number of factors, both on the ground in terms of young people and how they're thinking of their lives, but also actions that are happening at a larger level that are radically transforming mountain landscapes, whether we're thinking of them literally or more figuratively. And I think I'll just end by saying that COVID has also thrown a very strong light. I'm not sure how many people are really paying attention to this sharp light on the policy shortfalls that are those of us concerned with the mountains being highlighted by this issue. I'll stop now, and if there are any questions later, we can talk about that.
Thank you, Manjari, for those very thoughtful reflection on this conversation. Now we're going to step out of South Asia for a little while, and we're going to go over to Italy. And we have with us Silvia Scozzofava, who is the founder of the innovative social startup enterprise, and also Pina Leone from the Donatella Tellini Online Association and the Women's Library. Over to you, Silvia and Pina.
Thank you, and good evening, good morning, and good afternoon, everybody. I am Silvia Scozzofava.
I am Pina Leone.
And it's a pleasure to be with such an amazing range of co-authors of these amazing publications. So I will start with describing our context. As you said, Omer, we are from Italy, and we are based in the central Apennines. There is a mountain range that runs across Italy, so we are in the central Italy and at the center of the peninsula. We are rather near to the major city centers, to the capital city Rome and to the other coast towns, but we are still a remote area regarding services and industrialization and infrastructures and everything. So we have, as anywhere else in mountain areas, we have declining community, aging populations, landscape abandonment, and especially we have very important traditional land uses such as pastoralism and traditional forms of farming and also forest use that are declining. And this is having also ecological consequences because a substantial part of the biodiversity that we want to conserve through the traditional ways of instituting national parks and natural reserves and so on. It is a biodiversity that is linked to these traditional uses of the land. So the mere fact that these uses are declining puts some species at risk. And so this is the challenging environment in which reaching the conservation goals means working with the community rather than imposing just limits on the community. And this is what we, the institutional setting we were working on, allowed us to come across some specific cases that we wanted to present in our contribution. Our key observations were stepping from the fact that there have been ecofeminist movements that were making some philosophical reasoning around alternative development models and their social justice implications as well. And this allowed us to realize that the negative impact that we were seeing on the environment was also the consequence of the gender exclusion in these power models that were that were and are dominating, even in a developed country as Italy is. We, of course, everybody considers Italy to be a developed country where there's no problem of gender gap. Surely we have a lesser problem of gender gap than other countries, but this doesn't mean that there is no gender gap. There is a sensible gender gap that we need to tackle if we want to get anywhere in promoting sustainable development, especially in this setting. The need of integrating women into the management of ecosystem is not seen as part of the solution. And so the exclusion of women is not seen as a part of the problem. And we believe that this is a blind spot of policies. So the case studies that we came across were confirming this view of the centrality of the gender issues in the effectiveness of policies. We identified these two features of resistance and resilience in these stories. When we speak about resistance, we mean the capacity of devising proactive strategies, so to be active members of their communities rather than just resisting to negative forces. And as well, resilience is not just the possibility of recovering from a shock or recovering from personal violence, as sometimes is used this word in the feminist narrative. But for us, it is the possibility of persevering in an environment that all the rest of the society sees as of scarce opportunities, of little opportunities. But these women were able to cling to their setting, their traditional setting, their land, and devise new opportunities in these settings. And this allowed them to achieve social and ecological change in the landscape. The point is that sometimes we see women as fragile subjects that need protection and need to be empowered or given something in order to do something. What we saw in the stories we came across is that women are powerful members of the community if they find the right conditions where they can act and realize themselves, realize their own personal path of evolution, linking past to present and so on. So if we stop to see women as fragile people that need to be helped and see them as potential leaders in the community, because that is what happens when women are empowered. They can become leaders in their community and become acknowledged not just by fellow women, but the whole community can endorse them. This is the thing that we want to achieve. So not seeing women as fragile members allows to empower them and allow them to become leaders. The three case studies, I will briefly speak about them because they are rather different from each other, but they all have these elements in common. We took part in a study that was carried out by the university and the national park in this area that asked people to share their dreams and views about the future. And we decided to explore the subset of these interviews that was done by women. So the interviews were targeting everybody in the community. And then we realized that the women were just a minority of the sample, despite this was not intended. There was absolutely no intention in the researchers to exclude women, nor the setting was apparently excluding for them. But the point is that we realized that the women tended to hand over the word to their male fellow or family members or partners or even business partner. And so we discovered that this research that was very nice, very wide spanning and very interesting, was focused on male perception of the environment. So by extracting the subset of data relating to what was the women perception of the environment, we could do some reflections about what are also the stereotypes of what women would experience in this setting. And so in the paper, we highlighted some particular things that we thought notable. For example, the kind of perception that women have of natural resources versus their family duties. So family duties were not exactly at the forefront of their thoughts and visions for the future. It was part, of course, of their experience, but not the central part. In the second case study, we met some women that managed to become agent of innovation in their community. So it is important to highlight that these are declining communities where the mainstream society, the mainstream culture does not see opportunities. All the traditional farming systems are seen as outdated, as declining, as doomed to fail anyway. These women found ways of bringing innovation into tradition, and so bringing forward something that used to be just traditional, but was innovated through new knowledge, new skills, new capacities, also new links with the rest of the mainstream world. So in one case, there was a farm that started to act in an ecosystem service perspective before even the word ecosystem service was forged and came into use. But by having this intuition that the kind of environmental landscape and the rural traditions were important and valuable to the rest of the community, and so that it could be somehow sold to the rest of the community in the form of products of the land that carried with them all the values of the ecosystem they were produced in. And in the second case, there was also a woman that rediscovered the ancient art of weaving from her relatives, her old and aging relatives and friends in the community, and with a lot of difficulty managed to convince them to be trained in the art of weaving, which is not trivial. It is very complex to set up a weaving device and decide how to thread all the yarns so that to produce the patterns and so on. And eventually, as she had a different cultural perspective. She belonged to the community, but she was trained outside. She was able to bring this ancient art forward into the future and to give it a new dignity. And even the women in the community that were disregarding this art could recognize that now it had a greater value, a new value, and it was worth doing it. And she is still carrying on her activity. And similarly, we have also the story of two women that became leaders of a pilot project of reuse of the sheep wool that used to be a byproduct or a waste product. And they managed to get the chance of being trained in the wool selection business. So understanding how the wool quality is affected by the way the sheep are treated, the way the sheep are sheared, and introducing innovation in the shepherding business, which is a very patriarchal business and where women really have no space. Or used to have no space until recently. They managed to bring innovation, and now the wool is the main product in terms of revenue and of value for the farm. So the whole business is revolving around wool production now, starting from a period in which the male relatives were saying, "You're doing rubbish, this is worth nothing." And this again, in this case again, we find the role of outer education, being an outsider or becoming an outsider, being trained outside, and then coming back to the community with new knowledge and bringing new ideas, and maybe finding space because that thing was disregarded. So it was not patrolled by any male power because it was thought to be unimportant. And in these seemingly unimportant places and products and activities, these amazing women found their space to innovate and give new value to the community. And this is where, again, we come back. They were not fragile women in need of protection. They were powerful women capable of empowering the whole community and bringing new value to the whole community. Basically, this is it. We found some common elements in this very different history. If we allow women to speak up in the community, to speak up for themselves, to share their own view of the world, what is the result? The result is a more nuanced perception of natural resources, of opportunities, and of possibility of having a sustainable development of the community that takes into account environmental, social, and economic factors all alike. And if you have questions, of course, about the single cases, we are here to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia and Pina. Now from Italy, we move over to Togo. And we have with us Jules Ajima, who's the Executive Director of LCR. Over to you, Jules.
Hello, thank you, Omer. I'm very happy to meet you today, and thank you for your effort to join us together. And you and Sujeti, I'm thanking you for helping us getting peer reviewers for our text. You know, I'm from a French-speaking country and my English is not good, but I will try. Actually, we are from Togo, a small country of West Africa. And Togo is one of the small countries where mountain cover 1/3 part of the territory. And unfortunately, a country where the government does not manage land. The land is managed by families, clans, and so on. So the government, based on this land tenure statute, to govern, because we have a system of governance that is not very clear. And we realize that we are in a mountain area where during the colonial time, a forest reserve was established. And no one cannot dare going to take firewood or harvest fruit or whatever. But they have started maintaining, conserving the forest till 1994, where people are willing for democracy. And now, democracy, yes, but what can we do so that everybody contribute to the conservation of our ecosystems? Because women cannot, in our customs, woman cannot inherit land. Land is inherited by only men. But unfortunately, men cannot do everything. And the problem is that if only men can own a land and women not, but the day the man have an accident or is sick, only the woman can try to make survive the family, strive so that we the children and the man also survive. And we think and we say, if you man, you cannot allow your wife to manage land, your land for the benefits of the family. And unfortunately, women are blamed because they go to the forest or to the surrounding forest to harvest firewood or to harvest fruit, marketable product for the benefit of the family. We think that the problem is not the traditional law, but the idea our parents are narrow-minded. I put it in comma. Men are narrow-minded because they cannot follow the law and forget the love. Love your wife need, all you own belong to the woman too. But we have started that if you start changing the mentality of the men, it will help us finding solution for women who strive before getting even the elementary necessity for their survival. So with the support of our partners in the Netherlands, we have started a strategy to create a biosphere reserve between Togo and Ghana, in the highland between Togo and Ghana, because Togo and Ghana have used the same culture and habits. Because after the second war, the country was divided into two, one part to the England and one part for the French. So both parts have the same culture. That's why we are working together so that we change the idea of people that not only men can benefit from land, but women also can be great part of the benefit of what they can get from working on transforming their land. So by doing so, with the agreement of both governments to establish a biosphere reserve, communities, surrounding communities have agreed to give us their land for the reserve. And giving land for the reserve means that we have the possibility to involve also women to work together with men. And what have been the main challenge? The main challenge is that how can we manage that our traditional leaders understand that politics is different from the development. To develop your own area is different from making policy for the politician. And by doing so, we start changing their mind. So actually, I can say that natural resource management, forest reserve management, integrating women in all local development action start by the mind, start in our mind. If you don't change our mind, we cannot progress. We cannot make progress. We cannot go beyond what we expect to do. By doing so, we have tried with the support of our partners to gather all the village chiefs, the community leaders, the policy makers, and with through lobby and advocacy, they have understood that without women today, they cannot make a progress. The forests cannot themselves give them all those they need. And what we have done, we have tried to select community leaders, and with the support of the government and through the government policy to nominate women as prime minister, women as the president of the National Assembly. They started open their mind that women also in our local area can become a leader if they give them the opportunity. So in our document, we would like to share with our colleague that women are blamed in every continent, every village, every area. But if we start by changing the idea, give consideration to our women, their value, to promote their value, to talk to our parents, our fathers, that women have a great part to do in the development of our community, many things can change. But for the way forward, we think that we have, with the new law enforced in Togo, where women integration in the development, the land management is taken into account, we have extracted this paragraph, translated them in our language, international local language, and to popularize what the government intended to do by integrating women in the development of natural resources. And what to end, it is very important that we promote the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, especially the point 5, the gender equality. If you don't know the law, you don't know the international and national text, we cannot actually promote the value of women who are suffering for accessing land in our rural areas. So in my crude English, I've tried to summarize what we are doing in Togo here. Thank you, Omer.
Thanks so much, Jules. So for our final speaker, we move back to South Asia, and we have Sonali Ghosh. She is the Deputy Inspector General of Forests at the Central Zoo Authority in New Delhi, India. And over to you, Sonali.
Namaste and good evening. Thank you so much to the organizers for giving me this opportunity. I am the last speaker and I think we've exceeded time, so I'll be a little short and sweet here. And since the last time we wrote this paper together, and I must congratulate both Omer and Sejuti for the wonderful journey that we did while doing this. I think it took a fairly good time, but a very beautiful process, and it made me think. I'm primarily a forest practitioner myself in the Indian Forest Service of India. So we are less than around 250 women in a workforce of around 3,000 plus. So that itself was a very small, in a sense, of woman or a gender footprint, I must say. And since the time we last wrote this, I've now moved to Assam, and I'm based in Northeast India, and it's fairly late in the night. So having said that, I think the paper was quite thought-provoking, especially because we were looking at mountain ecosystems and gender. And my primary experience has been with the World Heritage, and in that too, primarily with natural heritage, which is fairly well represented in the mountain ecosystems. So I tried to look and link gender and culture and see that how they play an important role in sustainable natural resource use, especially in the Himalayan landscapes. We are all aware, and I think some of the previous speakers have kind of emphasized on this, that the culture shapes people's identities and determines the way they relate to the surrounding environment. And one of the mechanisms to formally recognize this has been the UNESCO designated World Heritage Sites, which kind of sets the standards for sharing best practices from around the world. So in this paper, which was more of a macro analysis, a gender lens was applied to the definition of heritage and to further analyze the role of heritage sites, especially for intergenerational transmission of values associated with the site. And clearly, gender played a very important role in this. The case studies that were drawn were from the World Heritage Sites of Manas, which is primarily the foothills of the Eastern Himalayas bordering Bhutan, the Kanchenjunga National Park in Sikkim, Nanda Devi National Park in Uttarakhand in India, Northern Himalayas, and of course, the Chitwan National Park in Nepal. And with our analysis, we could find that ecosystem-based livelihood practices that create sustainable interactions between people and nature have been the hallmark of such sites, and therefore occupy a prominent position in the discourse for heritage sites. We argue that to retain the outstanding universal value of such sites through oral traditions, it is essentially passed on from one generation to another, primarily through women. So therefore, gender equality is instrumental in broadening the definition of natural heritage, and gender actually enriches the scope and meaning of heritage for the benefit of society at large. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sonali, and thank you for hanging in there despite the late time, and to many of our other speakers as well. So we're kind of out of time, but we could probably take one or two questions, if any, either from the attendees or from the panelists to each other, or from anybody else. If there are any questions, you could either unmute yourself or you could put them in the chat box. Questions?
So if I may ask a question to Omer and Sejuti, how did you all get about this idea? I mean, I might want to even, and especially when we are looking at gender, Omer, you do definitely stand out here in terms of, how did you think about that you would want to do this and linking it to mountain ecosystems? Because from what I understand, that it was an idea which was floated perhaps 2 years ago. And what is it that, so if you would want to kind of throw some light on it, maybe Sejuti, if you would want to do that first.
Sure. So I think, so I'm not a practitioner, I'm an academic. So currently I'm based at the University of Victoria in Canada. but I do work very deeply with feminist traditions, queer theory, and so forth. So when I took over the Mountain Ecosystem Thematic Group as lead and Sujati is our co-lead, we thought that some of the perspectives that are so normalized in academic settings have not exactly been taken up the way we think they should have been taken up within practice, especially within conservation practice. And we already know how gender and nature are co-constitutive. We already know all of these things, but we thought many of the really important and essential feminist traditions that have been there for so long have not, for some reason, seeped into our area of nature conservation and practice. So we thought if we could bring together people who are actually doing this work and who have a deeper insight and kind of stake in these questions, if we can ask them, how are they understanding these connections or disconnections, and how are they kind of facilitating the flow of more critical or more experimental ways of understanding or inculcating gender within conservation practice. So that kind of was the inspiration for this project over 2 years ago, as I say. But I think the strength again is with all the authors and kind of positions they come from, because we have a very diverse range of papers in this compendium, which I think speak to again the very diverse nature of the conversation. That there is no one stakeholder to prioritize, there is no one viewpoint to prioritize, but there is space to kind of open up these questions further and further for us to look into. And Sujati, I don't know if you would like to add something as well.
Yeah, and also in the discussions that came up, that the knowledge and how the natural ecosystem services are used or viewed, so they're very different by each gender and how they're interacting with nature. And as we also discussed, like sometimes digital platform is bridging the gaps, or sometimes the digital divide itself alienates many women who do not have those access, or out-migration. So sometimes there are opportunities like tourism that are bringing lots of economic benefits to the region, but they are again creating a divide, and the kind of benefits that reach these communities are very different. If you look at the different gendered groups, the minority groups, even culturally minority groups. So we wanted to start this discussion on this. I think we have very short time now. I think we would conclude.
Question from Jules.
Maybe Jules. Maybe Jules can have one last question.
Yeah, please. Thank you. I have two questions, but the first one is to Sylvia. I'm very interested in their topics, the work they are doing in terms of resilience of women in a protected area. Since we are willing to create, we are creating a biosphere, a transboundary biosphere reserve in the island. How can we benefit from their experience so that we succeed in our work? Is it possible to exchange with the organization? And the second question is for Sonali, the last presenters, heritage values through gender. I want to know the perception of people while integrating gender in their approach, heritage values and gender. What are the perceptions of the local community of people in general regarding the participation of gender? Since we are also working towards the culture, traditional law that prevent our women to have free access to land, what is the advantage in their area that enable gender to be well promoted? I don't know whether I'm clear.
Sylvia,
I think I can briefly respond to the first part of Jules' question. The point is that what we described is not part of one project run by one organization. We collected stories of women that basically got organized by themselves. and manage to do and achieve results by themselves, even profiting maybe from financial occasions from the government or the park or whatever. But basically there is no single project around this idea. It's something that the territory produced by themselves. But sure, if you reach to me by email, I can give you some contacts with some of these women. And I believe that some of them will be definitely interested in getting in touch with people, even from other contexts, and maybe set up some way of having exchanges of experiences with you very willingly, really, very willingly. And I think is it enough for you?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Because we used to come to attend FAO meeting, mountain partnership meeting in FAO headquarters. So we used to be in Italia doing those kind of meetings. So maybe one day we will meet.
Who knows? Why not? Very willingly.
So parting comments from Sonali, if you want to say anything.
Yeah, no, thank you so much there, Jules. And the fact that you are yourself so sensitized and you're concerned, I think that itself is how you've answered your question about how gender and heritage people take it. Because honestly, it was, this paper kind of got us to think that whether we were actually looking at gender when we were looking at heritage. And the answer is no. I mean, heritage was being considered something very different and for people, but we realized that it was actually gender was very important when you're looking at how heritage has been transferred from one generation to another, the repository. So yeah, I think that it's important, and if we can, and possibly across all cultures, including yours, if we could have a better role for women and for the due regard and the intangible aspect of it, it would be important. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks everyone. I think we're out of time now, so we'll have to end the call. Once again, thank you all for making the time to be here. I know it's very late for most of you. I hope the publication is of use, is of benefit. I hope you will read it. I hope you will circulate it. We have another publication coming out hopefully by the summer that will be on community-led indigenous and local knowledges. So we hope to share that with you too very soon. And once again, thanks everybody. And have a good night for those of you. Okay.